Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the History of Fan Anime. I'm your host, William Chow, and today's episode, again, another interesting episode about interviews. I've got an interview with more of my friends that from the past, and we would talk about older times, different things about anime, and of course, some of the history that has passed along the way. All right. Before I begin, I'd like to remind people to go down below and click like and click subscribe. Even if you want to leave a comment below about this particular video and some opinions that you have, by all means, that does help the algorithm for YouTube. If you're interested in supporting me financially, I have the links for the super thanks as well as the PayPal and Patreon links below, where you can subscribe and get the special content that I cannot post here on YouTube. Again, there's a list with the link below of all the various different episodes I have for the History of Fan Anime, as well as the extra episodes that are available to the subscribers. And then it covers a lot of the content that, again, just YouTube just won't allow me to talk about. So, again, all that the extra content is there. All right. Okay. So without further delay, let's begin. In today's interview with Richard, we're going to be talking more about our collections and how we collect. The sort of the mindset about collecting, and not only we're going to talk about things like the value of collecting, whether it's something sentimental or how much is that value do we put in a particular item, whether it is because it has something that triggers something internally within each person, well, whether or not it has some sort of speculatory value for other people, or this entire supply and demand type of thing as opposed to usage and that kind of stuff. So we're going to sort of talk about that, and we'll get into discussions of these various different topics.
So here's the premise on collectability. What determines collectability? It's only comes down to one thing. Put it as succinctly as possible. Does anybody out there care about it? Then it becomes collectible. Now, you look at the viability of the collectible. If there is someone that cares, how many people care? If every person on this planet cared about the thing and there was scarcity, then of course prices go up. If there was an overabundance of it, there's still prices will go up because people will all go clamor to it, right? But whether you have scarcity or not, and nobody cares, then it don't matter, right? The people that want it will get it, and the people that don't care, well, then it means it's just a greater abundance story with the ones that do. You look at anything that is a fad or a trend, that's what determines collectability. One day it's a hero, the next day it's a zero, or vice versa, like vintage, right? People are throwing away all their 8-track tapes and players. Got supplanted by cassettes, then we went from reel to reel, and LPs, and whatever medium, tracked to music, reel-to-reel tapes. Then went to 8-track, then cassette, then CD. And now we have everything, it's digital, streaming, whatever. Now, some of these things may not be reproduced into a different format or available at all. So you want to listen to it or whatever for the music, you have to get the original medium and somehow translate it to the modern ways of being able to access it. So you got a recording of a first hyena captured on a clay tablet record phonograph. Well, you better find a way to be able to retrieve it because you're not going to be able to hear it. If you care. Again, do people care? And then the collectability and the price and the value and everything goes up.
I.e. the Wally syndrome, right?
Yeah. But like any fad, whether it's scarce or abundant, and it becomes a niche thing or a curiosity, depending on what the motivation of the collector is, it may or may not be worth much.
And Richard drops on the topic of motivation of the collector. Um, Obviously, one of the things that can add value, like personally anyway, is the sentimental value of a particular item. I mean, I can speak of things like if I wanted to, get back to something in my, in my childhood days. Obviously, I would probably place more value, to something in that regard. Like, maybe when I was a kid, Battlestar Galactica and Space 1999 were a really big thing. Now that I'm older and I've got more income, sure, I'd love to get a model of the the Colonial Viper again, and maybe a Space 1999 Eagle or something. But that would have more value just to me, more than anyone else.
It's only worth something to somebody if they really want it and they're willing to pay it.
Yeah.
Okay, you may have these fetishes out there that are into Beanie Babies, and there may be very rare ones that they think that are worth a certain amount of money, but who's going to pay it?
Right.
Right?
Unless
It's
you-
like I could be a Beanie Baby collector, you could be a Beanie Baby collector, and you're saying this Beanie Baby back in the day is worth that much money, some astronomical amount. And today I still think it's worth that amount, but I'm a Beanie Baby collector. But if I'm not, who cares? I collect stuffed animals or whatever, collectibles. I don't care if it's worth that much to me,
Right.
unless I'm a Beanie Baby collector. So I'm a fellow Beanie Baby. Oh yeah, that is worth a lot of money. How much are you willing to sell it to me for? And you'll say, well, I'll sell it to you for what it cost back then. I'm like, no way. Who are you going to find to buy it except me?
Right.
You're going to have to cut me a deal or give me a better price.
Right.
Not back then prices. Now you got to, because of the depression in the market and things have gone down in price, you got to give me a better deal between us Beanie Baby collectors.
Yeah.
So that's why I said to you, collectability of anything and market determination of its value, inherent value versus its actual value and its price is all based on if anybody cares about it. Right? Like I saw something recently on Big Bad Toy Store that they're reissuing. It's a full die-cast resin transformable version of the Macross SDF-1.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Looks pretty detailed, robust, not cheap. 650 US.
Yeah, yeah.
Now I remember when I went down to the States with you guys back in the 1990s, and I remember I had a chance at that one store that we went to. What was it called? It was called, I think the store was called New Type.
Yeah,
New Type Collectables.
New Type Hobbies or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had an SDF-1 there, a Macross SDF-1, transforming die cast and whatever it was made of. And at the time it was kind of pricey. It was American. It was about $100 to $200
Right.
US. And I looked at it and I really wanted to get it because I knew that thing was going to be worth stupid money one day. It's a true die cast collectible. Didn't get it. Now who knows what it's worth. But they're now reissuing a more detailed, maybe better, maybe who knows what, for $650. Now, if I like that stuff, sure, I'll pay $650 for it. But if I don't give a crap about Macross anymore and nobody cares, and there may be the avid collector out there, the niche collector, sure, they'll pay for it because they want to have it, because they couldn't get that die cast one I saw back then in the 1990s. But then I'm like, I got tons of Macross stuff. Yeah, it'd be cool if I got it now, but I don't care about that stuff anymore. I'm trying to sell my collection. Why would I get more of this stuff? To me, its inherent value may not be as much as to somebody that collects this stuff, but its intrinsic value may be still very high to a collector that may want my collection. It's like, oh, you got everything I always wanted. I'm willing to pay you top billing for it.
Right.
So, again, does anybody care? Like yo-yos, I collected all kinds of collectible ones. Rubik's Cube, I collected all kinds of collectible ones. Even knives. You name it. There's all kinds of stupid shit that I used to collect. Now it's like, okay, it's interesting, but it's lost its meaning to me. But I'm sure someone out there will find meaning in it and will pay me the right price if I can find that buyer.
Right.
If I can't, it's junk. Like your Jaguar, I think the only reason was it was just good timing. between its scarcity, its collectability, and maybe there wasn't even many good ones out there. People trashed them, or they didn't sell them and they threw them into a landfill or whatever.
Yeah.
You had the only one, and someone's like, "Hey, I want that thing. How good is it? Condition and blah 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 and all this stuff." Right? And so they gave you top billing for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I was collecting a lot of this stuff, and I knew some guys that were high-level collectors that paid top billing for watches, knives, gear, tactical gear, and everything else. And one of the things I learned from one of the guys was, when it's a hot market with a lot of hype for something that's either a fad or trending or whatever, once it's at its peak, it's just like stocks. Dump it when it's at its peak, because it comes in cycles too. It may go the way of the dodo bird, and people are like, "Oh, I don't care about it anymore."
Right.
And then some people will rediscover it and call it vintage.
Right.
Right? But some things may never come back. Ever.
Yeah.
Like Beanie Babies. Who cares? Yo-yos. Who cares? Rubik's Cube. Who cares? Right? And so they're curiosities at best and garbage at worst, till somebody finds something intrinsic in it that they find collectible and valuable, and then they'll pay top price.
Right.
Like, good example is Nike sneakers. There's a whole industry that was surrounding that for people that were buying collectible Nike sneakers. It's a stupid speculation market, collectible market. People would just buy these shoes. They don't never wear them. They're just buying the shoe for the shoe, just to collect it. And then the bottom fell out. There was a glut of all these shoes that nobody wears, that everybody collected, but then the market was being tanked, so they were trying to unload all these shoes. Now nobody cares. If you look at Nike stock right now, it's floating below $60 a share.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Where at its height, it was at some stupid amount. Right? Because there was a hype, it was a meme, it was a fad, and people wanted to collect all these shoes from different celebrities and whatever. Now you can't even give them away. I'm sure there's niche collectors or people that are into this stuff, but in general, the bottom fell out. There's a glut. Another big thing right now is the luxury handbag market, the luxury clothing market. There's a big thing that after these tariffs went into place from Trump, that China broke it out on TikTok and says, "Do you know where the majority of all this European luxury goods are made? They're made in China. You think you may be getting a bag made in Europe or a piece of clothing or whatever? No. It was made in China with the same high quality materials, but with Chinese workmanship. And then we ship it back to Europe and then throw a label on it, throw a brand on it. That's what escalates something that cost maybe $1,300 to make to $30,000, was they put the brand on it. You can get the same bag in China without the brand for $1,300 for a designer bag. But as soon as it went to Europe and they stuck their logo on it, it jacked that thing up to 30 grand. Right?
Yeah.
So that was obviously a conflated, or rather inflated and contrived market.
Yeah.
So luxury is a form of collectability, because it's a luxury that you can afford it.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I mean, if you're talking about collectability, I'd love to drive a Chevette, find one that's in mint condition.
Yeah.
I'll drive it, but it's a garbage car. But why would someone drive it? Only out of nostalgia, out of sentimentality.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's a good car.
No.
It doesn't even mean it's a collectible car. It's just, I wanted the experience to drive this POS car that was made back in the 70s and 80s, right? Right? But it doesn't mean it's a good car.
No.
Right? Someone just wants to drive it or own it only because of the fact that it had a really bad reputation, like a Gremlin or a Pinto, right? Or whatever cars that came out during, the advent of the production line from Henry Ford till now, right? I just want to see what it was like to experience this, even though it was a horrible experience.
Oh, yeah. I think in terms of, cars and that kind of stuff, I think it's a topic that a lot of us can kind of, get into. Is that, I think, in our past, we've always had cars that we'd always, love to get into. I mean, whether or not it's like, we had our influence from Initial D, we always wanted to always have or own one of those type of vehicles that like that, or maybe it's something from like Fast and Furious. Maybe it's influential cars like Knight Rider. Yeah, even things like that. We all have that sort of vision that I wouldn't mind trying that, or we wouldn't mind modding that kind of thing, or just you have the experience of doing that. I mean, who knows? Maybe you know there's actually a market for that kind of thing where you can live out that sort of thing by renting those type of vehicles. Who knows? That might be an idea, but I think a lot of people do still have that concept of owning and trying to do one of those type of things.
Yeah, I mean, there's people that drive things because they had a certain reputation or a certain persona to it, right? Like a Skyline.
Yeah.
Nissan Skyline
Yeah.
is a good, perfect example. Supra, another perfect example,
Yeah.
right? There's Jensen Interceptor, right? People thought it was like as a UK-made car, it had a reputation. It was supposed to be this powerful car, but then also other people said, yeah, that thing drove like a semi, right? So I mean, sometimes legends or myths or hype preceded the thing, and then the actual thing itself was like, oh, is this it? Really? Right?
Agreed. Yeah.
Like I think I talked to you before about ROM Space Knight, the Parker Brothers toy, and I have one of those, right? And it's a creepy looking toy. Mine's mint. Got from some Russian guy that found a whole bunch of them in a factory somewhere sitting in the corner. But if you look at it and then you look at the comic book that came out from Marvel and the whole culture behind it, the mystique, the nostalgia and everything else, the toy is ridiculous. It's absolutely appalling and horrid as a toy, right? And they charge a ridiculous amount of money for this stupid thing back then.
Yep.
But what they developed from it as a culture, which had no merchandising behind it for a comic book, turned it into something that was cult. And they even coming out with a new action figure now that's about $35 to $40. That looks way better than the original toy.
Right.
It's just an action figure, and it's from Marvel. But if you look at it, it's like, yeah, okay, it's like the comic book, exactly like the comic book. It's a cool action figure. The original toy, it was interesting. It was analog technology for how it made the sounds, but it was a stupid looking toy. Even I could admit that. It was fugly and creepy looking and no redeeming value to it whatsoever, other than the fact that it's a curiosity from the 1970s.
Right.
But how they portrayed it in the comic book and what they turned it into as a character, its lore, is much better than the original toy ever could have been. Because when Parker Brothers put it out, they never really did anything behind it. When the toy sales never came to fruition and its popularity waned, Marvel just decided to take it and turn it into a character, and it became a very popular selling comic book and a character that was reinvigorated over and over as a character in other comic book stories in Marvel.
Right.
Other characters against it. So again, nobody cares about the toy. The toy is stupid. But people care about what it got turned into lore-wise.
Yeah.
Right? The comic book sold better, the characters sold better in the comic books, but they never developed any merchandising around it at all. The original merchandise was intact, was available on the collector's secondary market, gray market, and if you're lucky, you could find one. And mint. God knows what it's worth now, but you could find it loose and find it collectible, and it wasn't that expensive, but it was stupid looking. And you look at the comic book and then you look at the toy and you're like, really? It was based on this stupid thing? This is horrible.
Yeah.
But in the comic book, it wasn't.
Yeah.
They depicted it much different, and it was a hot seller. I still have some of those original comics.
Yeah.
So you can sometimes revitalize something. Something vintage can be made to be cool again. It depends on how
I think
you.
one good example is,
Well, you have to.
old,
That's very similar to what happened to the ROM Space Knight. Like, here's the example. You had Transformers the comic book.
Right.
You had Transformers the cartoon. And then you had the original line of where all this stuff came from, just like Micronauts. Micronauts came from Microman, which turned into a Marvel comic book. Transformers got turned into a comic book from the cartoon. The original Transformers were not called Transformers. It was a hodgepodge of a bunch of toys that fell into disfavor in Japan. Okay, Japan had Microman that became Micronauts. They also had things from Takara, which Microman also came from, called Diaclone, okay, which became Transformers. And they had other things that were transformable toys, not just Diaclone, but other lines and other name brands and other things that had manga and stuff like that. That also became under the Transformers banner. And why? Because they had a glut of these toys in Japan that nobody was buying. There was no popularity. Nobody was playing with the main one. We got to get rid of this stuff. Let's invent something, repackage it, resell it, give it its own sort of lore or own type of myth or storyline, and sell it to a gullible North American audience. And that's where all this stuff came from, right? It was basically sitting in warehouses doing nothing, and they just reinvented a different thing. Because if you look at the stuff with Micronauts and you look at the stuff with Transformers, it was nothing like the original material in Japan. The stuff in Japan was a totally different lore. It was a totally different storyline, totally different, nostalgia behind it.
It's true. Because I think one thing at that time they had a whole bunch of things which are kind of the same but not the same.
Well, what they did was
they had things like GoBots out at that time.
Yeah, all that stuff was originally from Japan that never sold anymore.
Exactly.
So they had to reinvent something to reinvigorate the franchise or the IP. But they already had the toys ready made, and then they had to maybe fix stickers or put them in different boxes or whatever. But they had a glut of these things. So people thought, oh, this is this great. No, it wasn't. It was garbage to the Japanese. They already had tons of this stuff flooding the market, and nobody was interested in it anymore. So they had to export it to North America. No different than Gotcha Man, which became G-Force Battle Planets. No different than Space Battleship Yamato became Star Blazers and all this other shit. They had a glut of this stuff. And there was, at one time, a cult behind it, or there was a lot of interest, but then it just sat and didn't do anything. So they had to reinvent it somehow, make it more palatable to the North American audience. Perfect example is Gundam, right? Gundam itself, sure, it was cool for the Japanese, but then look how many times they reiterated Gundam into its various incarnations. Or they don't have disposable income, but they have the nostalgia, and they want to get closer to their kids.
Or things like that, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, let's look at it this way. If I was to ask you, just sort of doing a 180 on this, if you were to get a collectible now, and it was, for example, anime related, what would you want?
Right now, probably a Gundam 1 to 144 scale Keboi.
A what?
It's the Hamon Khan's white mobile suit.
But it wasn't a Gundam. It was a Zion suit then.
Yeah.
A Zion suit. Okay, so I'm gonna throw out there, if I was to have one of those collectibles, even though it'd be pointless now at my age, the space battleship flagship Andromeda electronic, sort of what you would call, what did they call them? They're not die cast, but they give them a different name for these collectible toys. There was a name for it. Anyways, this one had lights and sound and blah blah blah.
Okay, yeah, all right.
I got the Yamato version, but I never got the Andromeda. I don't know why. At some point I was like, nah, I don't want to spend money on this. It's another thing I have to put away and collect. Is it cool if I was to have that now? Sure. Can you get something like that similar? No, nobody's reissued it or done a better version or whatever.
Okay, so I hope you found that really interesting. And I always find it really interesting, to go and talk to some of the old people, because they always bring up stories that I sort of sometimes forget, or I don't quite have the exact wording sometimes, because I don't want to say something in regards to, in about someone's story, when they can say it properly themselves, because I might get some details wrong or whatever. So it's always better that you get the information straight from them. as well as it's uh, they always have some different perspective that maybe I just kind of forgot about, because so much time has passed. Sometimes I tend to forget them. So it's always good to to have a good conversation about that. Again, I will be doing more of them, so stay tuned for that. All right. So until next time, I will see you again.